everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you can see, I have this guy here. This guy who I have been waiting so long to connect with. I have been watching him on YouTube with, I think, the Soul Sisters and other people that you have been with, and I have enjoyed everything he does. He is a medium. So he's like a healing medium, I think is what he calls himself. Is that correct?
I
And
do.
he has a long, wonderful story. But today I get to interview him, and I have a few select questions, as I have had for other people that I have interviewed. And but what for right now, I am going to hand it over to Kevin so he can give us a little backstory of who and what and where he's coming from, and then we'll get into all the questions. So stay tuned. This is going to be a great one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's so funny because I'm usually the one asking the people all the questions. So it's like a bit out of my comfort level to have this attention, but I'm honored. Thank you so much, Sheila. I have admired you. I'm Kevin. I am the healing medium. That name kind of came to me one time sitting in a meditation, and I thought it was perfect and ridiculous all in one, thinking, who am I to call myself a healer or to acknowledge the healing in me? And then I thought, it's so perfect. And I think that just stepping into that it actually took something. And I think we all have that ability to offer and impact people in different ways. And my intention since I was a kid was always to make a positive difference in people's lives. And if I could provide them with a sense of healing or feeling better about themselves. And so in that, it was perfect. And so I just want to thank you. Thank you for inviting me, saying yes in this connection. And yeah, I started, it was almost a year ago it was actually with the Nasty Women. I was a guest on their show. And then from that, I went to all of these other channels as a guest, kept hearing no around starting my own channel. And then something ended at the end of May of this year. And it allowed me the time because what I realized is that you all work really hard, and the commitment that you put in, the time and the effort and all the stuff that happens before, during, and after was something that I just didn't have the time or space at that time. But when something it ended, it allowed me. And oh my goodness, the embrace from the community and the people, they feel like family and friends, who I get to share something that has been a part of my life since I don't remember it not being. So yeah, it's just wonderful to connect with other content creators and psychics and mediums and tarot card readers and all of it. So yeah, such an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love it too. I love it's like, oh, I found my people, right?
Yeah,
I found my tribe.
it's so true.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, well, thank you, Kevin. So I'm going to jump right into the question, or I have for you. Number one is, what journey have you taken to end up in the metaphysical lifetime?
mm. I love that question. And it's so interesting. Like I've got to this point in my life where and I think we can all access this, where I've been able to really just be present in the moment, and in that kind of step outside, kind of outframe from this human experience to recognize different parts, different aspects of myself. And so in that, I'm flooded with the experience that I've had since my earliest childhood memory. And then some of them feel like it was even before that. So all of this unfolding, unveiling of who I am in this human experience and who I am, from the spiritual or soul aspect of who I am, I feel like everything, all of it has brought me to this point. And I think of like those big things growing up and then like adolescence and young adult and to where I am now, there's this familiar thread of the experiences where I thought, hey, I knew this was going to happen, or I had this feeling about something, or this knowing, or these visitations with spirit or loved ones that had passed. And I just think like it all contributed to stepping into this moment and actually doing the work. And it wasn't it wasn't easy, I will say that. I would say coming out spiritually is one of the most difficult things that I have experienced in this lifetime, because I care so deeply about other people. And sometimes I would go, oh, I don't care. The truth was, I care so deeply that I've allowed myself to um, realize that not everybody's going to warm embrace me and like me and think even what I'm doing is okay. And in that, it took the better part of, well, look, several years of really just I say participating and choosing to step into it, but how you walk that path. And it's like these things are occurring. And it's like, how much longer are we going to ignore it? And
Hijacking is what I call it.
right. Yes,
I
totally.
get
I got
hijacked.
hijacked so many times, and I'm so grateful for it, because if
Yeah.
that's the one thing about spirit, is that they're just so
Mhm.
persistent, and they're gentle sometimes, and sometimes they're a little bit more firm, and it's perfect how we need it in that moment. But to answer your question, I think the unfoldment has just always been there, and all of the learning and the most important part about this experience is to have a human experience. So in that, all the good, all the bad, and everything in between has led me to really step into it today. So
Was
good
there a moment
question.
in time when you said, I don't want to do this, and you tried not
Oh,
to?
yeah. Yeah, I would say many. I would say many times, truthfully. And I think there's been times where it's like, it's brought me to my knees, and it's like, I I am so sensitive. I've always been an empath, and in that, because I care so deeply and can feel the feelings of all the people around me, whether it's in person or distantly, if I tune into it.
Hmm.
And so learning to adjust that volume around it was something that almost took me out. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been hard, and that's the thing. It actually, and even still, now that I do this professionally for about the last 5 years specifically, there's moments where it's actually hard. It's hard to be in the balance of this human experience and this spiritual experience simultaneously. And in that, yeah, there are times where it's like, I would say these connections, like with people like you and the community and, different colleagues and people that we can be in the conversation with and get that support, um, because
It
it
helps.
can, it totally helps, because it can, and I can just speak for me.
Mhm.
There's been moments of this journey and this unfolding of, with the abilities and how I'm in service and in partnership with spirit. It can be lonely at times because not everybody understands it. And so in that, yeah, it takes something. It takes
It
something.
does take a certain vocabulary, certain words, and certain understanding in order to function with other people. Sometimes I get what you're saying.
Hmm.
It does take a lot out of us. But we also get a lot back, and
Hmm.
it's seeking that balance. I hear you. I hear what
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. When we go to that place of being so vulnerable, the payback or the reward or what we get while being in service, we're never excluded in it. And that's the beautiful thing. So the more, yes, it does take something and to show up, and there's those moments, but you're totally right. What is received in that is life changing. It's some of the, those moments where I know yourself, it's like, oh my gosh, being in the exchange with people and in the conversation, like the jaw hits the floor in amazement of, our connection, and none of us are excluded in that, being taken care of with spirit. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, we're definitely going to move on to the second one, but that reminds me of that one moment where everybody else's trust level is up here. But in order to do this work, you have to have your trust level so deep inside of you, the trust has to go
Mm,
deeper within.
it's so
And
true.
that is a journey for
Hmm.
us to take, to really, really grasp the trusting what we're hearing and what we're seeing. So yeah, that's
Sheila, I think that's one of the most important. It's the anchor, and that trust in spirit
yeah.
is being in the exchange with people so that we're reminded, because the trust is there and that can be the foundation, but it can flutter and it can look a little bit different. So being in it, I think that trust is, I think, one of, if not the most important parts of this work, I will say. Yeah.
100% agree. Trust in your abilities. That's easier said than done.
Right. So
All right.
true.
So number two is, do you have a mentor, one of your favorite teachers or somebody that really pointed you in the right direction?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been several. I will give credit first and foremost, I would say, to my grandmother, who was, oh my gosh, she was wonderful. She is still wonderful. And just growing up as a kid, she would share things that a lot of my siblings and my cousins, I come from quite a big family, they weren't really interested. And so if they were, they would hear the story once, but if she went to say it again, they were nowhere to be seen. I, however, wanted to hear all of those stories all the time. Like every time I would see my grandma, I'd be like, can you tell me that story about, like, the time that she heard a little kids kind of laughing, and they played a trick on her. They were like turning off the lights. She was trying to read in her grandparents' house. Or this kind of sums up my grandma. She would say to me, wouldn't it be the most amazing thing if a UFO landed in the backyard? I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I think that would be the most amazing thing. So, first and foremost, she was so open. And in that, I recognized that she was partly ridiculed for those kind of talking about those kind of things. Not everybody understood it, and not everybody embraced it, and not everybody supported it. But what I learned was how in tuned she was, and the communications that she was having, it was familiar to me. So as far as like a teacher or a mentor in reflection, she would be the one that I would acknowledge first and foremost. So
Oh,
Grandma Shirley.
fantastic. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we all had a grandma like that for sure.
I know.
Were there any other people, like anybody who was in, like famous, like maybe Rain Dyer or any of those that you had listened to or anything like
Yeah.
that? Have they ever kind of directed you?
Yeah, there was one. I mean, for sure, Wayne Dyer goes without saying, but I'll back up to when I was a kid again. And actually, I was just sharing this with you before we started this, about someone that had worked intimately with Princess Diana. And there were two people that I actually got to work with that were directly connected to her. That's not really the point of this, but the one in particular, I remember watching her. Her name is Sally Morgan, and she's a famous psychic medium in the UK, in England. And I would kind of secretly watch, it was syndicated in Canada, and I would watch her on TV, and I was mesmerized. I was like, there was something familiar about this woman. I would watch her and I'd be like, I think she has the coolest job ever. So, in saying that, I had this knowing that I would connect with her one day. I didn't know when, didn't know how, whatever. But fast forward to about, I would say, maybe it was 3 years ago. Um, I connected with her. It started off with a reading. I had a reading with her, and it turned into a little bit more of like a mentorship, if you will, just in the conversation. And then I actually ended up working like for her on her team for about a year, doing readings and stuff all over the world. So she was really wonderful. I felt the thing that she taught me and that I admire so much is that she was relatable. I felt like if I would see her live or if it was like in this reading or however I got to capture her, it was the same. And that she just was who she was, and it's so fabulous. And she, I think this is the biggest thing, is that she displayed a level of ethic and integrity around this work, and
Yes.
that to me is the most important. So I would say she is has been very influential in my mediumship professionally. So
Yes, we are, that's one thing about us is we learn all the rules by breaking them first, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then
we
we
sure
we
do.
we readjust.
Yep, some on purpose and some by total accident.
Exactly.
But
Like, oh,
yeah,
we don't want
ain't that the
that again.
truth? Mm-hmm.
All right. So number three, what was your most painful lesson?
Mm.
Because everything
Um,
comes out good, right? But what was your most painful lesson?
it's an interesting one because it's like, do I share this story or do I not? And I'm going to, because that's who I am. And I think that um, there was some other mentors that I had along the way and a little bit more recent that um, sometimes things don't go according to plan, or in those relationships they can look very different than they did even the day before. And so in that, just to give a little bit around it, it was in my adulthood, it was a level of grief because the relationship ended with these particular people. And I love them dearly and I hold them in such high regard. And I focus on all the good stuff and all of the learning and teaching and nurturing that they did in bringing me into their circle, if you will. And in that, I think the painful part of it is, and maybe people can relate with this, that sometimes in the relationship we can be responsible for us, and there's always something in the breakdown of relationships where we can be responsible for things, and sometimes we're not given the opportunity to be in the conversation anymore. And so, as an adult, feeling like a relationship was severed and not to my, that wasn't my wish, that was probably, I think, in this, a really painful yet valuable lesson. And in it, I'm able to, those are one of those moments where it's like, okay, outframe and see, aside from all the feelings and the emotion and the upset and all of that, see the learning in it. So it was painful, but I'm glad that I went through it, if you will. So mhm.
So what I understand is this relationship you had with that group, it stopped abruptly and it
Yeah,
really took you down a little bit.
yeah,
That was
life changing.
life changing. And so the pain within was probably multi-layered by
Yeah,
rejection,
yeah.
remorse, maybe a little what is it called when you miss somebody or someone
Mm.
somebody dies? What is it called when you think of the word of it right now?
Like the grieving,
Grieving. There
yes, the
we go.
grieving. Yeah,
Grieving.
there
Yeah,
was,
I don't
yeah,
like
and that's
grieving.
just it. It was a, yes, I will tell you that the loss of my grandmother um, was a very different grief than this was, because these people are still here. And in that, it was more difficult. But the beautiful thing about it, and this is a thing that I've learned to um, be in, is that the lesson behind it was, and what came from it, is that I stood into my own. And in that, it went to the trust and those, teachings that they, you know allowed me to be a part of. I went back to that, and so unknowingly the severing of that actually allowed me to step into this work specifically on my own, and so for that there's gratitude in it. So
I think I completely understand what you're saying. When my husband had
Mm,
passed, I painted a little, but after that grief pushed me into painting
mm,
and doing that art. So I know what you're saying is it's a lot like I pushed myself to, it was a push to grow. It wasn't an option that I wanted to grow, but it
right.
pushed the growth in within you. Fantastic.
Yeah. Good.
All right. So here's the fourth one. It
Mm,
is what was your most joyous lesson?
wow. Um,
I know you have to just pick one, right?
I know, right? That's the thing. It's like the list goes on and on. Most joyous lesson. Um, I have to say that it comes in almost, I'm going to say almost daily, every time I step into a reading, just being in that exchange. Because here's the thing. This is the thing that I will say about myself. Um, I I see these as abilities, and I see that none of us are separate from these types of abilities. And yes, they can look very different. It's just like piano players. Somebody could get on a piano, start playing a piano, and be like composing music and doing all that. Some people like, it probably be like plug your ears. So it can look very, very different. We all have these abilities. And I find that the joy and the biggest lessons come when we make these connections and spirit aligns us with other people that we get to share in a little part of their life. And sometimes it's a big part of their life. I find that that's the gift part of it for me. And so, in that, the lessons and the joy that I have from what I get to do on a most of the day, most of the days of the week are just like, oh my gosh, they leave me going, I'm just without words. I'm without
We
words.
we get to witness spirit healing the human race
Mm,
real
yeah.
time.
Mm, I
In
love
real
that, Sheila.
time, we get to watch that. That is amazing to me every time. I am like you. I do not get depleted when I do readings.
Mm,
I join in the rising of their vibration and mine. So yeah,
I
I
love that.
get that. All right. So five. How do you receive your information from spirit? If you had
Mm,
to tell somebody how it comes through, what would you say?
hmm I used to see it as my imagination. And I'm really curious by nature and I have a good imagination. And I was always that kid to ask why. And as an adult, I'm still that kid asking why. And so in that, I would say that I didn't spend much time really focusing on, oh, this was my Claire, which one am I strongest in, and that. I just allowed it to happen. And then I recognized that people that I was sometimes collaborating with, or in workshops with, or in just in conversation, that they would ask me, like, well, like, where are you getting that from? And so it's only been within the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year that I've actually really stopped and went like, who is that? Is that a guide? Is that spirit? Is that a guide like telling me about like this, information about the loved one first? Like, so truthfully, um, I get it through all of the clairs. My knowing, my hearing, I'm extremely clairaudient. But they use all of them. And just when I kind of get comfortable and familiar with one, they throw all the other ones just to kind of shake it up so that I don't become passive in it. So to answer your question, I think I get it through all of all of the clairs. Um, a combination of my guides, their guides, different deities, source, spirit, loved ones. And I don't spend a huge amount of time in the moment going, where is that coming from? And I think it goes back to what you said earlier, in which I have this unwavering trust that I'm going to show up. I'm going to potentially make an arse of myself. I could be completely wrong on everything, but because my trust in spirit is so deep, it's beyond, a belief now. It's in that place of knowing.
Yeah.
I put that to the side. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where it's
So
there.
yeah, so that kind of brings me to another one is how do you know it's not you?
Mm, I don't know. I just know.
Yeah.
I think, and sometimes I think it's both because, sometimes in my human experience and just like Kevin in my thoughts and in this being, I find that a lot of times it's aligned with information that I will get from spirit. So I don't necessarily spend a whole lot of time trying to separate the two. I guess I'm working to collaborate with the human aspect of who I am and the spiritual aspect of who I am with this third party, if you will, or multiple, to really just bring the information. And as I'm saying it, I'm also being told that it's the feeling. Sometimes, like how I'll feel it is different than how I would just feel it being me. So in that, I guess that's partly the marker for me is how I feel it.
I think also from what I'm hearing from you is we spend enough time as empaths by ourselves. We spend
Mm,
enough time alone that we know who we are. And when
yeah,
we get to know who we are, it's not it's a connection, but it's a separation. That's not me, that's them. And
yeah.
I think knowing who you are while you're by yourself, I think is what you're doing.
Yeah, I love the way that you just worded that and it adds clarity to it. So here's the thing we're really practicing is getting out of the way.
Mhm.
I tell Kevin to get out of the way so that I can show up and just be that channel. And I
Yeah.
try not to interfere. And there's moments where I mess that up and it can look very different, but for the most part, I step out of the way.
But we
Yeah,
also feel it when we manipulate something. I go like, oh, that was me. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Automatically, I know. But yeah.
yeah. Love
Very
it.
nice, very nice. Okay. So, number 6 is what is your idea of a higher power or God?
Oh, wow. Mm. Love this question, and I don't see a difference in higher power. How I language it, to me, it can be so many. It's everything, and so in it, I learned to be comfortable with saying the word God, whereas growing up, it wasn't a familiar word that was used in my life. I had this curiosity for like something that I knew wasn't my belief because I wasn't, I didn't have that kind of exposure, but I just knew that there was something greater than me, and in it was like that's never been absent in my life. I've just had that deep knowing that there were greater reasons, and being inquisitive and curious and asking the why questions. I love it when they can't be answered because I feel like that's the surrender to something that's greater. And so I don't remember what your question was.
What the question is what is your idea of a higher
Mm,
power or God? What if you
mm,
had to tell somebody in front of you what you thought a higher power or a God was, what would you
mm.
say?
It's us. It's everything. It's the humanness, it's the spiritual aspect of who we are. It's the all the emotion, it's the expression. To me, it's everything. And we're not separate from it. The moment that we think we are in that illusion of disconnect, we've got it wrong. That we are source and we are all of that greatness. And yes, little pieces of it, but just so yeah, I think that it's everything. You know.
I
Mm,
used to, as a little girl, used to think it was the sun shining on us.
mm,
I thought to myself that I do nothing, absolutely nothing but wake up that day and the sun shines on me no matter what. And I thought, that has to be something of a higher power or God.
Yeah. And it is.
I do
It
nothing to
is.
deserve it,
Yeah.
right? Done
Mm,
nothing that day to walk outside and get sun on my face. And there it is. It's always there, constantly and forever mine.
I love it.
Yep. All right, so now we're to our last question, and I've enjoyed this whole session with you, and I
Me
appreciate
too.
your willingness to answer the questions, right?
Thank you. They're
So the
great
last
questions.
one, yeah, the seventh question is, if you had only 5 minutes to help somebody spiritually, what
Mm,
would you say?
wow. 5 minutes. You know, it takes me to something that I just heard recently, and it was Debbie from Freebird Spirit that she was asked a question, and I'm feeling called to share this. That someone asked her um, what advice, if she could give her younger self a piece of advice, what would it be? And I can't quote exactly what she said, but what I took from her answer was, I think the answer to this question, and it was, you know, that was it. It was just a loving embrace, and it was a not correcting the younger, child aspect of who we are at any point. And yesterday we're still that child. In this moment, we're still that child. So how that would answer this question is, and this is something that Debbie does all the time, is that she leads with love. And so that would be what I would share with somebody, is that we're going to mess up, and we're going to have our highs and lows in this human experience. And that's actually what we're here for. The soul aspect of who we are and our spirit, it's always been and will always remain, and it can handle anything. And in the humanness, it can be really tough. And so if we could come from a place of leading with love, and first and foremost to ourselves, and then that reflection is outward to everybody, that is a spiritual life. None of us are separate from it, whether we place our attention and our knowing on that. We're always connected, whether sometimes we don't feel like we are. We are never not alone. We are always included through spirit, that we can heal. The miracles can happen to us. We're all deserving. And so in that, it just feels like a whole lot of love. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. So that is absolutely what I would think, to give somebody some advice that in their, probably in their worst moment, right?
Mm,
Is that we are connected and walk with love. That's beautiful. I love it.
so good.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, for being here. And everybody that who has made it this far, I really hope that you have appreciated this and learned as much as I have. And the connections that we have in this world are profound and meaningful. And
Mm.
I cherish each and every one of my collaborations. And yeah, so thank you, Kevin. I think this was wonderful. What, do you have any final words for everyone?
First, I will just say, like, if people are interested, I I forgot to mention in the beginning, but I do have my own YouTube channel. It's The Healing Medium. If you feel called to come check it out, wonderful. Love to see you. For personal one-on-one readings, which is what I mainly do, I have a website, also The Healing Medium, so people can find out what I do there. And Sheila, just thank you so much. Thank you for holding the space of listening, and still I don't feel alone in this conversation. So it's nice when others can relate, and yeah, I really value this time and space that you provided. So I appreciate it, and I hope that we can do it again.
Yes, definitely. Maybe I will convince you to do some political readings. Yeah.
Could you
Well,
imagine?
I
Totally.
know.
Okay. I mean, I'm open. And you know what? Here's the thing about it. I think sometimes not knowing all of the details is a good thing.
Yes, I am totally, I love doing blind readings. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that's when I do my best work. I may not know all of the little itty bitty like ages and details and stuff like that, but I get the essence of the whole thing because it's a blind. I slate clean and let's
Yeah.
go in for the energy. So I
Love
agree.
it.
All
Thank
right,
you, Sheila.
everyone. Bye, everyone.